think globally, but you got to act locally. What you apply to one plant and how you get to it is not necessarily going to be the same at another plant, right? On how you get to that information, right? I mean, the technology would be the same and you can execute the same way, meaning that how you get to that data, but some plants are more standardized than others. And some of them have a lot of varying different types of automation technologies in there that they use. And I know we've talked about that in previous podcasts that we've done.
Yeah.
But it's unfamiliar and unknown.
Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, I'm Dino Busalaki.
And I'm Craig Duckworth. And today, I think we're going to talk about headlines. They're everywhere. It's what's happening in the news, in the media, in real day life.
You sound like Ron Burgundy.
Well, someone's got to be right. First thing I want to talk about, Dino, is Gartner, one of the leading, evaluation organizations, research companies have just come out with a new Magic Quadrant for OT cyber physical systems. And I really want to kind of talk a little bit about that, kind of what they did, how they evaluated it, and some of the players that we're seeing for those out there that are listening that are trying to go down this journey. It's a great place to look, to do some research, figure out who the players are, kind of where they stack up against each other, and kind of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, we have a little bit of an inside track on that, right? Because sometimes when you look at 17 vendors that they evaluate and as they set the criteria, we do the same thing. But in the real world, if you look at those leaders in that particular OT cybersecurity space that bring software solutions to the table, we work with them every day. And we sometimes do bake-offs because clients want to see the tools in their environment to determine which one best meets their needs. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with what OT cybersecurity technologies represent, take a look at the Magic Quadrant report from Gartner to look to see who the leaders are and who the challengers are and the visionaries and who's the niche players. And some of these vendors you guys are going to be very familiar with on the IT side with Cisco Systems and Palo Alto and Forescout, maybe Tenable. But then there's others out there that tend to fall more into the OT arena. And what I mean by that is a lot of IT groups will pick a tool they already have. Let's say you're a Cisco shop. You may, as an IT organization, think I want to leverage the Cisco OT IDS platforms within my environment. There's nothing wrong with that, but some of the others aren't as good as the others, right? So, it's kind of the round peg, square hole. And what I will tell you is that if you present the OT cybersecurity technology in front of the organization that's going to receive the bulk of the work from what these tools provide, it's going to be your OT team has to be involved, and they will help steer that decision-making process. And if you leave them out and they don't participate at the same level, you will find, we have found, is organizations pick these technologies and it slowly morphs into shelfware. And we can get into why at some other point of why we see that. But if you're not bringing the OT people in, and if you still don't know who the OT people are within your organization, please go do some research and find out who they are. But it's going to be those folks that are responsible for your manufacturing environment.
Yeah, the OT teams, to kind of help bring some clarity into that, are the operational technology plant floor controls engineers that are responsible for manufacturing and producing the goods and products that you as an organization sell every single day. So you may call them maintenance guys, you may call them technology support, controls engineers, controls managers. Yeah, but again, these
and it's their ecosystem too. Don't forget the suppliers, right? Because you
got Rockwell, you got Ignition, you got Siemens, you got Honeywell, you got all of the automation vendors. Yeah, for sure.
And so from an IT perspective, you got to look at that ecosystem the same way you look at your IT ecosystem of partners. Who you buy technology from? Microsoft, Cisco, Oracle, SAP, take your pick. And you have relationships with those companies, you have relationships with vendors who supply you that stuff. Maybe they provide you services, resources, et cetera. The same holds on the OT side, right? They got a whole bevy of suppliers that
Right.
bring them these technologies, they bring them these machine centers, they bring the infrastructure that goes with them. And now these OT organizations are starting to develop and design cybersecurity related technologies into the machines that they're providing. So think safety. Safety is job number one.
Yeah.
So, over the last 15 plus years, they've been doing a better job of designing safe systems. Well,
Yes.
now that we've got that under control, now we're moving towards how do we make them cyber ready? I think the term that I learned at S4, which we can talk about here in a little bit, was, what did they call that? I always called it cyber ready machines, but it basically, there's guides and implementation use case studies out there that basically are looking for engineering to implement cybersecurity, reducing risk in the machines that they're designing and building.
Okay, nice.
But
yeah, but back to the Gartner, again, it's the cyber physical systems protection platforms and some of the true plays that are there that are built for OT, that are OT centric, that have better, more deep, rich protocol understanding. And then you look in, as you get away from that high right quadrant, which is the magic quadrant, where the leaders emerge and they've got a complete platform and they've got better vision. And you get to some of the other, what we would call OT hybrids, or the IT technology that are trying to backdoor into that really are a me too, to kind of, because of their IT prevalence.
Right.
And,
Well,
just making sure that you look at this with the right lens of, if you are trying to protect and secure your OT assets, not all IT technologies have that ability to understand and interpret those protocols down below that controls layer.
Well, and they can also be disruptive, right? Some of those tools that they use and how they implement them. And I would say, as an IT leader, you might check with your peers and your colleagues, find out what they're doing in the manufacturing space.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you don't want to work with your competitors, but your peers and colleagues that you guys don't view each other as competitors, find out what they're doing. I think you'll be surprised how many have already started this journey. As I always say, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, because it takes quite a bit to learn, what do I actually have in my environment? Of all the jobs we've done, and we've done hundreds of them, nobody has a good grasp on exactly what they have in their plants. They just don't.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they're highly dynamic facilities, especially if you've been through mergers and acquisitions, if you've been through high turnover, little to no documentation, and not having tools in place to create a baseline of the assets that you have. And from there, you can determine your vulnerabilities and risk associated with that, everything from end of life, into support, to real life exploits that are out there in the wild that you might really be concerned with trying to close that gap and improve your cybersecurity posture. So talk to your peers and colleagues, find out what they're doing and what tool they picked and why did they pick that tool.
Yeah. As I glance at that report, that quadrant, all of those in that top right corner, as we are partners with. So again, back to that ecosystem, choose a partner that's comfortable with your environment, your control space, that understands the technologies, the support, and can help you down that journey, regardless of what tools and technologies you want. And we can do that with any of those. That's an important distinguishing factor as you try and go down this marathon.
I remember what that acronym was, right? It's CIE. It's Cyber Informed Engineering.
Okay. It's a lot like secure by design.
Right.
It's along that same thread.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
exactly. So sorry for driving off to that side, but I wanted to make sure. I knew I had to shake my brain a little bit to get that to pop back up. But
Understood.
all right.
That's
And
okay.
I learned that from the S4 conference, right? So we just came back from S4, another great conference down in Florida. And what I will tell you is that this is a conference that's been going on for almost 2 decades now, and we've attended the last handful. But I'm starting to see more participation of roles that are being defined. One, companies are starting to create OT cybersecurity positions within their organization. And it's a combination of both engineering and plant teams and the IT teams. And from our experience, those organizations that have a really tight relationship between IT and OT, they're aligned, they're very collaborative, they're transparent, They recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they leverage each other, and their partners are starting to build a coalition around how do we provide a cybersecurity strategy for our business. And so the S4 does a really good job of, one, bringing all of the technology partners in, the leaders, the visionaries, activities that are going on in this space, use case studies, what they're witnessing around the world. They have a lot of different events in there, but a lot of the vendors that Gartner has published in their Magic Quadrant report attend and participate at the S4 conference.
Well, a selfless plug for Dale and the team that sponsor, promote, and run the S4 conference, Dale Peterson. That conference is designed for the OT ecosystem as it's evolving, as it's becoming more prevalent, and the tools and technologies that are there for that organizational structure. It's designed to promote that. Was started out of the operational side and has continued to grow and evolve. It's a gathering place for that ecosystem to be at the cutting edge of what's there, because it is such an important shift as organizations are trying to figure out, how do I apply the same frameworks to secure and protect my OT infrastructure as I do my IT infrastructure. And there are differences in the way that it's applied, but the frameworks can be similar in the overarching piece of that.
Right. And also how it's funded, because on the OT side, a lot of it's CapEx, and OT is obviously primarily OpEx. And it's not that OT doesn't have OpEx, they do, but in order to replace end of life and end of support machines on your plant floor, it usually requires a capital project to do that. It's not like you're going to get an OpEx project that's going to come in and say, I'm going to do recontrol and upgrade PLCs, replace PLCs, upgrade my SCADA system, replace my SCADA system, update my network, replace my network. Those types of activities traditionally and typically in the manufacturing world on the plant floor usually fall under the umbrella of a capital project.
Because of the life cycle it takes to complete it, do it, the cost associated. Yes.
The way they depreciate it off the books, the way the accounting rules are handled, and that's why a lot of that stuff falls into that particular piece. So as an organization, you're going to have to figure that out, that blend between CapEx and OpEx. Because when you do have capital projects, and it's something that, from an IT leadership, you might want to try to get your arms around, is what capital are we going to spend in the next 3 to 5 years, and what's it going to be focused on? That's the time that you really want to start talking about funding your OT cybersecurity technologies in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And because it's not, for most organizations, this is all net new stuff. And because there's a lot of unknowns within these manufacturing facilities, if you have a lot of plants, if you have, a dozen or more plants, it's going to take a bit to go through each one of them, right? Think globally, but you got to act locally. What you apply to one plant and how you get to it is not necessarily going to be the same at another plant, right? On how you get to that information, right? I mean, the technology would be the same and you can execute the same way, meaning that how you get to that data, but some plants are more standardized than others. And some of them have a lot of varying different types of automation technologies in there that they use. And I know we've talked about that in previous podcasts that we've done.
Yeah.
But it's unfamiliar and unknown. And so you have to have an organization that really knows how to go in there to do this work and not be disruptive, right? You can't shut it down while it's working, or you got to work around their maintenance windows and schedules that they put out there that you have to come in behind and work while that plant is down, or portions of that plant are down, to do some of this work. But just keep that in mind when you start pursuing OT cybersecurity strategies. And don't just pick a tool for threat hunting. If that's what your intent is from an IT perspective, if that's what you're looking for, you're kind of missing the boat a little bit, right? You really need to look at a technology that meets the majority of it to meet the OT needs, right? Because you want them to see value and benefit of it. If you have a cybersecurity OT IDS platform today, and if I'm working in your manufacturing plant, installing a packaging line or doing some life cycle replacement, I should be seeing information from your OT IDS platform to give me a better idea from an engineering perspective of what I'm up against inside this plant. What are the weaknesses that are in here? What are the vulnerabilities that you have? What's the remote access look like? What kind of things should I be looking for and maybe implementing for you and designing into these machine centers as I complete the project that we were brought in to do in regards to doing that refresh project?
Well, as organizations are going down that budget cycle, that approval process, and your IT leadership is trying to incorporate the holistic enterprise-wide security strategy to build into that CapEx portion for the OT security as well. And there may be a portion of it. If you look at the way that IT outsources and this SOC and their leverage partnerships with other third-party providers, there may be a piece of that as you're trying to leverage, how do I support the operational side from a managed services of who's going to interpret and understand all of this net new work that's coming in. Maybe there's a CapEx and an OpEx component within that as they're trying to understand what that looks like.
And set the ground rules too, right? And understand them, because a lot of the OT guys are not big fans of cloud solutions, and they don't want them. They want things to be on-prem, because in their mind, if it's instrumental to running the plant and you lose your WAN or you lose the cloud piece or whatever, they don't want that to impact them. And the other thing is they don't want a lot of their information to be somewhere that it's not within their control. I would say from an IT leadership perspective, you need to start helping them understand that, one, all of these platforms that are out there, again, back to the Gartner Magic Quadrant report, all of them provide cloud-based solutions. Many of them provide on-prem, but they all provide a cloud-based solution. So now's the time to talk to your OT leadership on the values and benefits of cloud and why it's relevant and it's important, and help them with that. Otherwise, they're going to fall back to on-prem solutions. They're going to tell the OEMs and system integrators that are coming in and driving some of these OT cybersecurity initiatives within the plant. And they'll do it with or without you, because their ecosystem is bringing this to the table and starting to ask those questions. And a lot of times we catch IT flat-footed because they either have a tool that doesn't necessarily fit, round peg, square hole, or they haven't been sharing, or they haven't even been looking at it.
Well, and as we look at the shifting landscape, the changes that we as a country have seen in the last, 60 days, let's call it, with DOGE and the implementation of new policies, procedures, guidance from the federal government, there's a chance that the accounting rules and regulations could potentially change and shift to be more favorable.
Right.
And the tax regulations could shift and change to be more favorable for some of these projects as we as a country are looking to secure and protect our critical infrastructure, our manufacturing, and how we can do that. So now may be the time to see what you can do as an organization to get some of these projects in there and really begin bolstering your cyber presence.
As we're seeing in our business, the things that are coming back on shore.
Yes,
right?
for sure.
And so obviously those are going to be capital expenditures, and you're going to start seeing some retooling. And when you start seeing that type of activity within the manufacturing arena, that's the time to start thinking about your cybersecurity strategy if the money is being set up and set aside for OT cybersecurity. And that's the time to do it, right? So whether there's tax incentives that are driving it, onshoring that's driving it, retooling of your plants that you've got going on, and you need to start, that's the time to start trying to figure out, how do I set money aside in order to improve my cybersecurity posture within my manufacturing environment? Well, you got to bring all the sides together. You got to get, as I used to say, you got to get all the liars in the same room, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I'm basically saying those that are responsible, the key stakeholders, the decision-making teams, need to be involved and engaged in this journey.
Well, as manufacturing shifts, as more come back to the U.S., that the onshoring, as you mentioned a while ago, you look at AI and how it's playing a prevalent role. The data centers, I saw a statistic last week or early this week where 65%, I believe was the number, of the AI data centers around the globe are focused in the U.S. Look at the production of those data centers and the power that's taking to do that, what's happening from an infrastructure and onshoring. really becoming prevalent of we are trying to make sure that we're going down this road correctly.
Right. And we're seeing that in our business, right? Because we do a lot of data center work, right? When it comes to the power systems for you folks out there, our organization focuses in the semiconductor business, but also in the data center business, meaning you got building automation, building management systems, power management systems, and we're wrapping cybersecurity because those data center companies are going in with cybersecurity in mind. Right.
Absolutely.
They're not an afterthought for them. It's
it
part of
can't
the
be.
project going forward with those guys.
It can't be. If you manage a data center that's 300,000 or 400,000 square feet or whatever that is, if you lose your cooling or you lose the chilling in that data center, you don't have a data center any longer.
Power fluctuations,
for sure.
So just keep that in mind as you guys go through this journey. Again, for you IT folks out there, I've become familiar with these OT cybersecurity companies. I would bring them in and talk to them. I also bring your OT people to the table and work with them. Again, don't do this by yourself. Don't do this in silos.
No, not at all.
It's a recipe for disaster. But I will tell you, is OTs growing and maturing in this space, they will go down their own path like they typically do. Because I always fall back to, at the end of the day, who actually owns the asset out on that plant floor? Who owns that PLC? Who owns those drives, the HMIs, the engineering workstation, servos, the motors, the pumps, all of it, process? Who owns that? And now, I don't see IT organizations becoming the new plant operations team.
No,
it's still a team. So, and they will go down their own path if you let them. And their ecosystem will bring these tools to the table if there's not a working relationship across the aisle between IT and OT. So if you're looking for an integrated approach, if you're looking for an enterprise-wide structure and strategy, you got to get together. Otherwise, you're in silos. And if you're in silos, then nobody's really winning. But I will tell you that OT will go down their own path. And we've seen it, and we work in that space, and they will head down that path to bring these technologies and services and solutions to the table if there's no guidance or conversations going on with your IT teams.
Totally agree. Organizations have to choose a partner, choose someone that both sides are comfortable with, that can have the discussion, have the conversation, and begin working together.
The other thing I will tell you is that for those organizations that work with big IT VARs that provide consulting and technology, and they have manufacturing clients, they're contacting us and working with us as a partner to do delivery and execution on the plant floor, because it's not something that they typically do. It's not something they're familiar with. So get back to that OT ecosystem. The OT ecosystem on the solution provider side is hooking up with your IT solution partner that you're working with today. So just know that's going on in the backdrop of this conversation.
Again, it allows for best-in-class solutions, providers, services to be able to present a unified front to the client. Total makes sense. Great conversation, Dino. We could have this conversation for the next 4 days and never stop. But I don't think our time's going to allow.
Yeah. Well, safe travels. I know you're going to be on the road.
Yep, you too. Appreciate it. Great conversation as always.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.